Welcome to the February 19th, 2019 Board of Commissioner meeting. Please silence your cell phones, pagers, and other electronic communication devices. If you need an agenda, they're on the bottom shelf in the back of the room. Next, we will have a moment of silent reflection and then a pledge of allegiance led by Commissioner Ron Rosknecht.
Please join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next, we'll have the review and approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion?
So move.
Moved by Gary. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Lloyd. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have the recognition of Ron Jeffries. If we could have him come to the podium. And Commissioner Ron Rosknecht has a presentation, please. Do you need your paper? Yes, Libby.
Ron. Me and the other commissioners would like to present you with an award today. Not an award, but just a present. A token of our appreciation for your dedication and your, along with your staff and your hundreds of volunteers for doing such an outstanding job on this year's stock show. And I realize that probably induced about $22 million in revenue throughout Rapid City and the surrounding areas. So we just really want you to know that we appreciate your hard efforts and your work, and we can't wait for next year. So without undue delay, here is your so you use that accordingly in your office.
Yes. Well, first of all, it was a very good stock show, and thank you to the Pennington County Commissioners. Much appreciated the recognition. I know, Ron, you mentioned this, but everything starts with your generous allowance of my staff to take care of the Pennington County Fairgrounds and to help promote events and activities down there. And we greatly respect that honor that you've given us, and we cherish that. We work hard at making sure things go well. As you mentioned, my board of directors is an all-volunteer board of directors. There's hundreds of volunteers that go into helping produce this event. I've got an awesome staff that works year-round to make things happen. And I take this recognition as a note of all the good work that all of those people do in helping produce the Black Hills Stock Show. So I humbly say thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you, Ron.
Do we have any commissioners? Any commissioners?
You going to
who'd
show
like
us how to
speak?
use that?
Yeah, I'm going to get lessons from Kevin.
Commissioner LaCroix?
Thanks, Ron. As a new member of your board, and me and Gary were at the last meeting, and it was really enlightening to see all the hard work that your staff and your board puts into doing the stock show. And the review that you guys had at that board meeting was outstanding. I think you guys are continuously looking to improve and have steps in place for that to happen. And even some of the board members were very proud of how it came out and the work that you guys are doing. So I'll be anxious to see how things turn out for next year. And the fair for this year is looking to be an exciting time, I think.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Any other discussion? All righty. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Commissioner Rosknecht. Ms. Holly Hennies, the consent agenda, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. Holly Hennies, Commission Office Manager. For public notice, the Board of Commissioners uses a consent agenda to act on non-controversial and routine items. The consent agenda is acted upon by one motion and vote of the board. Items may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda at the request of a board member or a citizen. Today's consent agenda contains the following items. Approval of the minutes from the regular meeting of February 5th, 2019. Number 7 is to acknowledge the notice of intent to conduct a raffle for the Run for Rule as submitted by Ms. Erin Rule. Number 8 is to accept the recommendation for appointment of Mr. Paul Paulson to the Weed and Pest Board for a 3-year term representing Area 3. Number 9 is to authorize the chair's signature on the USGS joint funding agreement as submitted by Emergency Management. Number 10 is to authorize the chair's signature on the state and local agreement for personnel action forms as submitted by Emergency Management. Number 11 is to declare the Hill City fueling pedestal as surplus for the purpose of disposal as submitted by Highway. And number 12 is to recognize and thank the volunteers for the month of January 2019 as submitted by Human Resources. And Commissioners, at this time, I'd like to request you pull number 9 at the request of the Emergency Management Director.
Thank you, Ms. Hawley. For Dustin? Okay. So at this time, is there anybody from the public who wish to remove any items from the agenda, consent agenda 6 through 12? Not. At this time, are there any commissioners who wish to remove any items from the consent agenda 6 through 12 besides number 9 for Dustin and number 12 for Commissioner Drews?
Madam Chair, could we pull 12?
Okay. We are pulling 9 and 12 already. Any others, commissioners? No. Not. Do we have a motion for 6, 7, 8, 10, and 11?
That would be my motion.
Motion by DeSanto. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by LaCroix. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Number 9, Mr. Dustin Willett, please.
Good morning, Commission. Dustin Willett, Rapid City, Pennington County Director of Emergency Management. So on the memorandum that we submitted for this item, the U.S. Geological Survey Joint Funding Agreement, when we prepared the memo for you, we transposed 2 numbers. So the Pennington County and the Rapid City amounts are flipped. So actually, the city of Rapid City is the $24,985.92, and the Pennington County is the $10,602. So those 2 amounts got transposed when we prepared this memo. So I just wanted to correct that before.
So, Ms. Kara, did you get those amounts and that they're changed?
Yeah, I'll get it.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner DeSanto.
there was also a typo on City of Keystone. Comma should be after the 1, not before the 1.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other discussion or a motion, please? Motion?
Move for approval.
Moved by LaCroix,
Second.
second by Roskinick. Any other discussion?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner DeSanto.
Dustin, explain a little bit for the public what this is all about.
Yep, you bet. So for the last 21 years, communities that live along drainages that are subjected to flash flooding have all contributed to the maintenance of what we call the METWARN, or Meteorological Warning Network. There are a series of meteorological gauges and flood stage or height gauges along the creek that give us early warning to flash flood events in drainages throughout Pennington County, but particularly those in and immediately surrounding the Black Hills. So every year this comes before you. It's a joint agreement with the USGS and then Pennington County, and then Pennington County in turn has an agreement with several jurisdictions within Pennington County to help defray those costs so that they're not all on the county.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Follow-up?
on some of those warning meters, flood gauges, we chose last year to only fund half of them, correct? Half of a couple of them?
So some of the stuff that came out of last year, I believe what you're referring to, Commissioner DeSanto, was the Rhodes Fork and Castle Creek gauges that West Dakota Water Development District voted to not fund.
Okay.
We kept them in place during flood season as seasonal gauges.
Okay.
I was at the West Dakota Water Development District meeting last week when they made their first motion to refund those gauges. They have to vote on things twice, so it'll come up again at the next meeting. But unless the vote changes, the vote last week was for West Dakota Water Development District to renew their commitment to those gauges. So we as Pennington County, looks like we will not be paying those 2 gauges again this year. So I have not submitted that agreement to you because we're hoping that West Dakota Water Development pays those gauges.
Very good. Thank you for the
Thank you.
clarification.
Any other discussion? We do have a motion by LaCroy and a second by Ross Connect. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Number 12, Mr. Commissioner Gary Drews.
Madam Chair, thank you. As I look through the list, this is honoring the volunteers for this past month on behalf of the county. As I look through that, there's a lot of people that volunteered for the search and rescue, looking for the Dennett girl. And plus, when you look under emergency management, you see a further list of volunteers. And I just want to point out that all the volunteers for all the departments is appreciated. But weather did not cooperate with this search and rescue effort. And I just admire those people that have been willing to get out there and spend their days out looking and searching. So appreciate the volunteers.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Commissioner Ross Connect, please.
Gary covered everything I had to say, so.
Okay. So number 12, a motion, please.
Madam Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner
I
LaCroy?
just want to echo those two. I was reading through them and counting them up, and in between the jail volunteers, search and rescue, law enforcement, JSC, emergency management, and the treasurer's department, we've got a lot of people that do a lot of work for our community and helping us out. And that, after just recognizing Mr. Ron Jeffries, they operate on a lot of volunteers and so forth. And I think we just need to give them a good round of applause for the work that they do.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Move for approval.
Moved by DeSanto,
Second.
second by Drews. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. Next, we're on the regular agenda items 13 through 18. Items from the auditor, Cindy Moeller, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. Cindy Moeller with the Auditor's Office. The first item that we have on the agenda is a request from the City of Rapid City to transfer some property. It's Hamilton Subdivision Lot D. This is a piece of drainage property that's unbuildable, and the city would like to maintain it as drainage, and that's why they're asking for us to transfer the property to them.
Thank you, Ms. Cindy. Is there a motion, please?
Move for approval.
Moved by LaCroy,
Second.
second by Ross Connect. Discussion, please. None? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Cindy, 13B.
Making sure we're at 9:15 for our hearing time. Can we discuss it before we make the motion?
Okay. There you go.
This is supplement 19007, and this is to supplement Health and Human Services in the amount of $82,037.21 from restricted fund balance. This is unspent money from the John T. Bukurovich Foundation that we received last year, and that is why they're requesting the
Thank you, Ms.
authority
Cindy.
to spend it this year.
Do we have a motion, please?
Move for approval.
Moved by LaCroy,
Second.
second by DeSanto. Discussion, please. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
The second supplement that we have before you is to supplement the general fund law enforcement budget from grant revenue in the amount of $78,329. This is supplement 19008.
Thank you, Ms. Cindy. Do we have a motion, please?
So move.
Second.
By Drews, second by
Troy.
LaCroy. Any discussion? Commissioner LaCroy, do you have something?
If I remember right, this one's, Kevin, this one has to do with the meth grant.
Good morning, Kevin Tome, Pennington County Sheriff. Yes, it's a statewide meth grant that flows through the State Division of Criminal Investigation, involves Sioux Falls Police Department, Pennington County Sheriff's Office, the State DCI, Oglala Sioux Tribe, and Pennington County and Rapid City Police Department. It's a 2-year grant.
Okay. I really didn't have no questions. I just wanted clarification for the people viewing.
That's okay. Any other discussion?
Move
If-
for approval.
It's already been motioned by Drew, second by LaCroy. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners.
Thank you, Ms. Cindy and Sheriff Tome. Number 14, items from equalization. This is abatement application from Mr. Schlinkert.
Good morning, Commissioners. Shannon Rittberger, Director of Equalization. There are a lot of abatement requests that are before you today. The first two on the agenda come from the property owner. Okay, I would suggest you do each one of those individually. The items 3 and 4 are bunches of them that have come back from the cities and the towns that are the normal stuff, and I'll skim over those, the normal stuff that we do this time of year. But 1 and 2 are property owners who I think are here, and they're asking for an abatement.
Well, sir, let's start at 14, number 1.
Yep, Mr. Schlinkert, and I think he's here?
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Schlinkert.
Go to the side, you get a microphone here.
Shannon, do you want to go first? That way
Just
give-
as an introduction, Mr. Schlinkert has requested an abatement for what we normally call the elderly assessment freeze, but it's actually elderly or disabled assessment freeze. And there's an application where the property owner has to apply by a deadline. Mr. Schlinkert missed that deadline, but the law says that if he misses the deadline, he can request an abatement for the commission, and that's what he's done. He's provided some information to the treasurer because the application actually goes to the treasurer's office, and since the deadline, he's provided the financial information he needs. And according to the law, says if they would otherwise have qualified, may ask the commission for abatement. So the treasurer's office said, okay, if he'd have met the deadline, he would otherwise have qualified. He's just here now because the law allows him to come ask for an abatement if he missed the deadline.
Hold on just a sec, Shannon. Did all the commission get this was put on the dais? So everybody's got that extra sheet that tells the other taxes, that it was exempt 1819 and that he's applied since 2006. Make sure everybody has that first. Everybody got one? Ron, do you have one? One of these? Okay. And Gary, you have one. Okay, thank you, Shannon.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner?
I don't know if he's not done.
Oh, sorry.
I want to add that this is a request for abatement on the 2017 assessment. The property will be exempt from taxes from now on because Mr. Schlinkert has applied for a paraplegic exemption, which makes the entire property exempt, the entire tax bill. This abatement will be a partial abatement because it's an assessment freeze that freezes the property to at value of whatever it was back in time when he became disabled. It winds up being only a partial abatement. And I also have to add that there is a tax certificate on the property. So the taxes have been paid by whoever owns that certificate. The abatement will turn into, if granted, will turn into a refund that will go to whoever owns that certificate.
And the other thing we need to know is that's why the interest is put on here, guys. If you do the abatement, it's not paid till February, he still owes $377.82. If it's not paid until March, $387.90, and if not paid till April, it's $397.90, meaning that interest will keep going up from there. I guess you can't. I'll be quiet. Commissioners, sorry.
Chair.
Commissioner LaCroy, please.
I think at our last meeting, I asked that this be continued because I wanted to hear from you. As Shannon, one of my concerns is that the certificate's been sold. Mr. Sinker, do you have any intentions of trying to get that tax certificate back by, if this commission was to grant this, is your intention to try and buy that tax certificate back and get the lien off the property?
Yes, I would. I didn't know that had transpired.
Okay.
Discussion. Do you have a follow-up, Commissioner LaCroy?
No.
Okay.
That was my main question. I wanted to talk to him about it from our last meeting, and with that,
So discussion?
I'm satisfied.
Can we hear from Mr. Slinkard?
Yes, Commissioner Drews. Sir, would you like to tell us about the taxes? Because at this point, you owe $907.60 for 2017 taxes. Like Commissioner LaCroy said, it's been sold as a tax certificate. And then from there on, because it was sold as a tax certificate, you will be owing interest for every month not paid thereof.
I'll get that paid as soon as possible.
Okay, and you understand that interest keeps accruing this year, sir? Okay. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner LaCroy.
I'd move to approve.
You approve
His request,
refund
yeah.
of the $907.60 in taxes due to
Yes.
abatement. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second. Discussion?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner DeSanto.
I just want to voice my concern that.
Commissioner DeSanto?
I just want to voice my concern that if we do this for Mr. Schlinkert, we may be doing it for many other people as well. And we are going to, I don't want to see us set a precedence. There's deadlines for a reason. And that, I don't like to be calloused, but when we're late, we're late. We all pay late fees when we are late on our payments. And that's just the way I feel about this. So.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Ron Ross.
I certainly agree with Mark, but then we also got to look at each one of these and look at their merits and look at our hearts and do what we feel is the right thing to do. And so not every one of these are equal. So they have to be looked at individually. That's why they have the process to let us make that decision. So in making my decision, I had to reach down to my heart and do what I felt is right. The next one, I might feel different.
Thank you, Commissioner Roskinick.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Drews.
may I ask Mr. Slinkard a question?
Yes, sir. Mr. Schlinkert,
Mr. Slinkard,
Yes, sir.
so did I understand you to say that your intention is to pay back the $907.60 plus the interest that's
Yes.
owed now?
Yes.
Okay, do you have any idea when that might be?
The only thing I can say right now is I'd like to be able to make payments on it. I'll do it monthly.
That answered my question.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Janet?
Good morning, Commissioners. Janet Saylor, Pennington County Treasurer. For clarification, you said the $900 was due on the taxes. That's not correct. The total taxes were $1,200.48. The $900 and some dollars is the only thing you're giving the abatement on.
Right.
So the amounts that would be due, like you said, the $377.82, Deb, that's due by the end of February,
Yes, ma'am.
that has to be paid in full. We cannot take payments on it, just so Mr. Schlinkert is aware of that. You can't make payments on it. The certificate has been sold, and we don't take payments on taxes.
So, Ms. Janet, on the 907, if this commissioner or commission granted the 907.60, that would be paid. If the 377.82 would not be paid and it would keep accruing interest.
That's correct.
How would it accrue interest if the certificate was sold?
Because the certificate holder has a right to that interest until the entire taxes are paid on a monthly basis. That's in law.
So the motion would have to be,
Only the abatement part would be the motion.
and we couldn't do the interest?
Absolutely
commission.
not, because somebody has to pay it. Either it comes out of your budget, if you pay it for him, but it keeps accruing until these people get all of their money back.
But what I'm saying, if this commission is 90760 and we're already paying the taxes out of our budget, it's coming out of,
You're not paying it out of your budget. You're doing a refund to the person that bought the certificate.
thank you. Thank you, Ms. Janet. Sir?
If I may thank Jay Alderman with State's Attorney's Office. Another way to say it, I guess, quickly is the total taxes, as the treasurer said, was around the 1,200 figure. The partial abatement is the 900 and some dollar figure. That's what you would be refunding to the person who paid the taxes. That's the certificate holder. So what would happen then is the outstanding certificate, instead of being worth 1,200 and collecting interest on that 1,200, would now just be a certificate for like $307 or whatever, collecting interest. So, to Commissioner LaCroix's point earlier, Mr. Schlinkert could redeem, is the term that's used, from the tax certificate. He would be able to redeem from that certificate, cancel the certificate for $300 and some instead of the full 1,200. So everybody wins a little bit here. The certificate holder doesn't lose their certificate, but it's only worth $300 and some. So the actual property owner can redeem for a lesser amount, and that's a benefit to them. Does that make?
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Ross Connect?
Say, Jay? So if we granted the abatement of 90760, that would simply just go to the certificate holder and offset what this gentleman would owe if he tried to square up on his back taxes.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yep.
Madam Chair.
Hold on.
Excuse me, point of
Ms. Janet.
clarification, but if he does not pay this $377.82 for February, and that certificate remains on there, and they keep paying those taxes for 3 years, they still can take the property.
Just from the interest? That's,
And
oh,
from
it's
what
still,
is not abated.
okay. Commissioner LaCroix?
Mr. Schenker, from everything you've just heard, if this abatement was approved, that the tax lien holder would get that $907, but there's still an outstanding $377.82 that would need to be paid this month. Are you able, no payments, but would you be able to come up with that money to pay that interest? I would say by the end of March would be a fair statement. So that'd be $387.90. Would you be able to afford that?
I should be able to by the end of March. By the end of March, I should be able to, yes.
Okay. That's what I wanted to hear, because his intent is to buy back the certificate. Well, you're going to end up buying back the certificate. And I'll just echo what Ron had said. I think I've been on this too, even the last meeting. When you miss the deadline, I have a hard time going from that. But I do think that once in a while there are exceptions, and that's what this board's all about, is to wade through those to make our decisions. And in this specific case, I'm willing to give them till the end of March, as long as he's perfectly understanding that he's got to pay the $387.90 in full.
Thank you, sir.
So, Shannon, just a question. Didn't we have an abatement from a man that applied, wasn't it, I can't remember, was it last year, or, remember he was veteran, and we had continued it and tried to work with him, and he didn't meet the deadline, and then we ended up not giving him that abatement. But I thought, when I was told that we couldn't give the abatement no matter what, because the auditor wouldn't sign that. Why is this different today?
The law allows, when the property owner would otherwise have qualified but missed the deadline, the law allows him to ask the commission for an abatement.
Right.
Now, Janet and I, in these situations, have always recommended denial, because if you grant it to everybody who missed the deadline, nobody will meet the deadline. Okay, we can see that coming. So we recommend denial for that reason alone. The key thing is would otherwise have qualified. The situation you're talking about, that property owner would not have otherwise qualified.
Thank you.
Missed the deadline, yeah, but wouldn't have qualified anyways.
Yeah.
Mr. Schlinkert, make sure I get my names right here. He would have otherwise qualified and missed the deadline.
Okay,
So you can grant it here. I would still recommend denial for the reason that he missed the deadline, but he would otherwise have qualified.
thank you for the clarification, because I didn't want to set a precedent on something that we didn't do for somebody else. And I too believe we can make exceptions. But in that case, I would have wanted to make the exception, is a good way to put it. But in this case, I'm going to have to agree with Commissioner LaCroix and Commissioner Roskinick. So any other discussion?
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Roskinick?
Sir, why was it that you did miss the abatement? I'm just curious. Obviously, you missed the deadline for filing that abatement, but I've never heard the reason why you missed that deadline.
Right now I'm having a hard time getting things situated in my home, and for the last 30 years, Dear Marks, the former code enforcement, has been trying to have my house demolished, and I've been going through a lot of hard times from that, and I just on my fault, I just missed the deadline. I'm not asking for excuses. It's my fault, and I'm just sorry that it happened.
Shannon, I believe there's a notice that goes out to taxpayers that an abatement, there's a process and the deadline. So is that just in a letter form, or is that, we've kind of talked about that, or is it in a?
You're using the wrong terminology. You're saying abatement, you mean application for the elderly and disabled. Assessment freeze. The assessment notice doesn't have anything, or the tax bill doesn't have anything that reminds a property owner to apply for one of these exemptions. In this case, the elderly and disabled assessment freeze application is made to Janet's office, and I think she does mail reminders to people that have had it in the past, reminding them of the deadline. But on the ordinary tax bill or assessment notice, there's nothing.
I just wondered what the method of notification was, that's all. If it was just a letter and somebody missed it,
Well, Commissioner Roskinick too, he didn't otherwise qualified is what I was getting before then. And number two is that he's been applying since 2006, and now at this point, he's now qualified, and Janet and our staff has helped him through where he is today. Does that make sense?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner
Ms.
Roskinick. Just,
Janet.
it is on the tax notices that says that they need to apply at my office, but also anybody that applies every year gets a letter in December that says, here's your notice, you need to apply for the tax freeze. Mr. Schlinkert has not applied for this freeze since 2011.
Right.
Just for information purposes.
Thank you, Janet.
So I misunderstood. I thought he had applied since 2006, and then.
That was the first year that he applied. He
Okay.
applied from 6 to 11, and then he quit applying.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Janet, for that clarification. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries with one no. Commissioner DeSanto. Number two, Mr. Swear.
Madam Chairperson, Jay Alderman with the State's Attorney's Office. I just want to clarify on the motion that was approved.
Sir.
I thought I heard some inclination that it's like a conditional abatement, meaning if Mr. Schlinkert comes in by the end of March and pays that remaining dollar amount, $387.90 or what it was, then you would grant the abatement? Is that?
Commissioner Croy, your intent, please?
Well, quite frankly, it wasn't part of the motion, but it was a condition of the questioning when, I think. But I'm guessing that that's what the commission would like.
I think we have to have clarification, because if that's the case, the
I
abatement
just have
wouldn't
the
go
abatement.
through.
Because neither one of you had decided for. no.
Commission, I would agree with the 90760. I guess that's where I was going. And then if he accrues interest and he doesn't pay it till March, I'm hoping Mr. Schlinker does it, but I'm not going to hold him. I'm not going to take it away from him myself.
Would we have to
my motion.
reconsider that?
Amend it.
Or but we already voted
Well,
on it.
It already was approved, so yeah, you'd have to reconsider. But that's why I wanted the clarification, because if it has that condition on it, then the abatement can't immediately go through until that condition is met.
Hold on just a
If it
sec.
doesn't have that condition, the abatement can go through immediately.
Thank you, Jake. Can you clarify the motion for us?
I just have to approve the abatement request of 90760.
Did you want to reconsider, sir?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a reconsideration motion by Commissioner Croy. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by DeSanto. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries.
I'd like to make the motion to approve the abatement with the condition that he pay the $387.90 by the end of March. You understand that, David?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Second by DeSanto. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. All right. Thank you, Mr. Schlinkert.
Thank you.
Have a good day, sir. Thank you for your service. Number two is Mr. Swear, please. Shannon, a little background for Mr. Swear?
Okay, so this is a similar situation, well, with the exception that, I want to make sure I'm saying this right, Swear?
Correct.
Swear. Mr. Swear is asking for an abatement for the veterans exemption, which is $100,000 exempt off of an owner-occupied residence. The same law exists for the veterans exemption, where if the veteran would otherwise have qualified but missed the deadline, he can ask the commission for an abatement. Okay, same situation applies here. Mr. Swear is asking for an abatement for 2019. Now, to complicate it, the veterans exemption, the law says, can only apply to an owner-occupied property. The law is very specific that you can only get that veterans exemption on an owner-occupied property. In 2018, Mr. Swear's property was not classed as owner-occupied because he did not provide an application as required by statute to our office saying it was his principal residence. This is the one I want classed as owner-occupied. The deadline for the veterans exemption is November 1st. The application for owner-occupied classification is submitted from November 1st until March 15th, so the deadline is out there farther. For 2018, the property was not classed as owner-occupied. He would not have otherwise qualified for the veterans exemption for 2018 because the property was not classed as owner-occupied. He didn't give us an owner-occupied application. Now, there is a very narrow exception to the owner-occupied application that says if you miss the deadline for the owner-occupied application because you are on temporary duty assignment with the military, you can ask the commission to reclass the property as owner-occupied. Talking with Mr. Swear, he was, at least at that time period, not on temporary duty assignment for the military, so he doesn't qualify for that exception to the owner-occupied application deadline. In summary, the commission has no grounds to grant an abatement for 2018 because he would not have otherwise qualified for the veterans exemption. However, I'd like to add something to this. This is an abatement request for 2018. In 2019, Mr. Swear has submitted an owner-occupied application. He gave us, in fact, an owner-occupied application and an application for the vets exemption for 2019. He was late for the 2019's assessment for the veterans exemption application, but the owner-occupied application was timely. For 2019, his property is classed, or will be, when we mail assessment notices here very shortly. It'll be classed as owner-occupied. And then he's in the same situation for 2019. He would otherwise have qualified for 2019 because his property is classed as owner-occupied. And I think when maybe we're done arguing the 2018, the commission take action on 2019 instead of wait until next year and having him come back do the same thing all over again. So I would recommend denial because you don't have grounds to grant the abatement for 2018, but suggest that maybe you take action on 2019 while he's here.
So Shannon, just a question. If he's a disabled vet, is that different than just a veteran qualification? Because he's under disabled, or does he have to get a different application because of age, or how does the, like we just did for Mr. Schlinkert?
Mr. Schlinkert was asking for an abatement due to an elderly or disabled assessment freeze.
Right.
He was disabled. I don't think he's old enough to be elderly.
Right.
He was asking for that disabled assessment freeze. There is no tax break, tax exemption for a veteran. There are tax breaks for a paraplegic veteran or a 100% disabled veteran, which Mr. Swear has applied for. This is not, the last one was just a disabled assessment freeze.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Swear?
Ma'am, Commissioners, I want to thank you for taking the time to hear me on this matter. I took residency of my home. It was an ADA compliant home built by an organization by the name of Homes for Our Troops in August of 2017. They pushed for the recipients of their homes to actually move to Texas so that they're actually 100% tax exempt. I had to fight them, and I fought them for about 1.5 years so I could stay living in my home of South Dakota here. It's where I grew up. It's where I love. Upon receipt of that home in August 19th of 2017, they handed me the paperwork, and I filled it out with Mr. Bill Ivey, who was the CEO of Homes for Our Troops. By August 21st, that paperwork was delivered to the office here for the tax exemptions, and it was never done. I received my paperwork for the taxes for this year, and prior to this, my home, because it's new construction, I was only paying on the value of the property. It was only $488 some change twice a year. That's not a big deal. That's too easy. However, this year, with the total amount of the value of the home and the property, I received, the postmark on it was for January 2nd is when I received the letter, which is well past November 1st. Any time to file an appeal. Total amount due is $7,954.28. I'm 100% disabled and on a very fixed income. I lost the use of my left arm. I can't even hold stuff. I have no strength. I have a severed nerve in my left arm at the elbow. I lost my left leg above the knee, and I have a hard time even standing on my own with the right leg. I limp like crazy, and I can't stand for any long duration of time. When I'm in my home, I use my wheelchair. Anyways, this home was built so that I could actually live out the rest of my days and grow old in it. And that's what I wanted to do, is grow old in my home state of South Dakota here. I'm pushing for a motion to actually find a way what can we do? I guess I don't know what to say. What can we do? I don't understand how I did the paperwork and how whatever happened, if it got tossed in a pile, somebody didn't file, somebody didn't punch in the computer right, what happened? I don't understand the system, but I don't understand what happened and where and why now. I understand gentleman here stating that, he didn't have paperwork on file. He didn't have, and I can understand that. And I'm not holding you accountable for that. I've never seen you sitting at the desk back there, sir. And it wasn't until recent where I redid the paperwork again that any of that stuff was done.
Thank you, Mr. Swear. Shannon, do you have any follow-up on that for when they came in 2017, or was this a different type of property because of what Mr. Swear said through the Veterans Association paying for this property for veterans?
Shouldn't have made any difference, different type of property. But I do want to address the statement that he brought in the application for the veterans exemption. He just told me that this morning. I don't have one on file. But we know we don't have an owner-occupied application. So if he's correct, and I don't want to argue that point, but if he's correct and he did bring that in, he wouldn't have qualified because the property was not classed as owner-occupied.
So, Mr. Swear, when did you pay the $488? Was that last year or the year
I
before?
paid that twice last year, ma'am.
So, Shannon, how did it change from that to the $8,000, sir?
Let me understand it. It's a new house?
Correct.
Yeah. So what he's referring to is his first tax bill on a brand new house was the house assessed as partially complete. That first tax bill he got was based on an assessment of that house that wasn't finished yet, much lower than the second tax bill, which the house is fully finished, assessed as a finished house.
I see.
Discussion? Commissioner Roskinick?
Shannon, let me get this right. The house is new construction, correct?
Yes.
And when was the house constructed?
Well, the 2017 assessment is based on a November 1st, 2016 assessment date, and on November 1st, 2016, it wasn't finished.
That'd be correct.
Under construction.
When was the house completed ready for occupancy?
The next assessment date, November 1st, 2017, it must have been finished.
The date that the house was actually officially ready to move into and fully 100% finished was August 15th, 2017, sir.
Okay.
So when our assessment date rolls around on November 1st, then we call it finished.
So then, I'm just trying to get to the owner occupancy part, because that's the part that we gotta get over before we can move on to the next part, if it's my understanding. So, sir, when you get your assessment notices, do they come to the address where your new home is?
Correct, sir.
And so the point that I'm trying to make here is that if he lives in that house at that address, and that's where the notices go for assessment and taxes, common sense tells me that it's owner occupied. Well, that's just common sense to me. That's the way I look at it.
The law requires an application. It doesn't matter where the assessment notice goes. An assessment notice and tax bill for a rental home or a vacation home might go to the address of the property. Or an owner-occupied residence might have the assessment notice and tax bill mailed somewhere else. What determines owner-occupied is it's your principal place of residence. You can only have one property you claim as owner-occupied, and you have to provide an application to our office stating that this is owner-occupied.
So then on October 25th, 2017, and this gentleman called in response to a door hanger that was left on his property from an appraiser in your office. And that appraiser advised him of owner occupancy. The deadline for the owner occupancy was evidently still out there, 4.5 months. So, do you remember getting that phone call?
I did not, sir. I don't recall ever getting it, but.
That's all I got.
So, Mr. Kasai, would you like to speak? Sir?
Thank you. Morning, Commissioners. Wayne asked me to come in and say a few words just based on working with him over the last several years. And I shared, Ms. Hennies, I shared a background story that was a public story. It was I shared the Rapid City Journal, and I hope you all have copies of it as just a backdrop to Wayne's story. The main thing that we do for Wayne in our office and Senator Thune's office is help him navigate through the federal bureaucracy. And it's a maze. I mean, for somebody that's just not used to working with it, it's an absolute mind-boggling. And we often prevail, with issues like this. But then, I think of the local governments and how difficult it is, for the average person to really stay on top of things. And I don't want to refer to it as bureaucratic, but it's just really cumbersome. And what I'm seeing here is a gentleman that did everything by the book based on what he was told. When he was handed the house and qualified, that's not an easy qualification to qualify for a house, built by Homes for Our Troops. He did that. That's not their first time that they built a house, so they know what he needed to do, and he followed everything that's needed to do. We helped him on the federal side, and then he did that at the local, at the county level. So if he, dropped off a piece of paper here or an application with good intention, and it did not get to where it needs to be, now he's responsible for that, and now he's being penalized for that. As a matter of fact, and Ms. Hennies knows this, that we were here just a couple of weeks ago for a meeting because he had submitted paperwork earlier, I believe in December, and he submitted it, he brought it in, and yet it did not make its way to where it needs to be. So, I see a little bit of a pattern. I'm not pointing fingers at anything, but I hope that when you look at the situation, that you do everything in your power, to make a sound decision in favor of a veteran that has paid a hefty price. I don't think any of us can relate to what Wayne has been through. So, for the average person, remembering dates and staying on top of things may be an easy task. In many cases with veterans, it's not as easy. Just getting through a day is a challenge. So we work closely enough. There's a lot that I cannot disclose, but we work very closely with people like Wayne, and frankly, that's one of the rewards of what we do, is advocating for folks that have wore the uniform, paid the price, and now they're coming back and trying just to frankly lead a life and enjoy what they, as much as they can. This creates a huge burden for him, with fixed income. The cost of living adjustment from the federal government when you're on, disability, it's not automatic, and it doesn't keep up with the cost of living. So again, as you do this, I'm just asking that you do everything in your power to, if you have to err on, if you have to make a judgment call, that judgment call would be in favor of somebody that, from his perspective, then did everything right. He thought he was doing and submitting the paperwork that he needed to, and yet it turned out not to be the case. So thank you.
Thank you. Shannon, can you describe the temporary duty assignment so he could get that? If he had temporary duty assignment, he could get it, right?
That's all the law says, that if he was on temporary duty assignment. That's all I got, because that's all the law says.
Does it describe temporary duty assignment?
It just says on temporary duty assignment. Mr. Swear says he wasn't.
I guess depending on what temporary duty assignment was for me, I think that he could probably qualify under that. I know, Shannon, you're sighing. I just can't see going from $488 to 8,000 for a veteran, and he's telling us, and I know I'm with the big heart, and, we always want to do the right thing. But I also understand, again, he was disabled, that he's 100% disabled, and we just did an abatement for a man, Mr. Sinkert, for being disabled. And it says in the statute, 10-18-2, but it also, if you read it, allows this discretion between abatement or assessment for property owner that otherwise have qualified disabled veteran exemption, owner occupied classification, but missed the deadline to each, but only if specific statutory criteria are met. So he doesn't meet that because he wasn't temporary duty assignment, or he would?
He doesn't meet it because the property wasn't classed as owner occupied. There's the exception to that deadline being on temporary duty assignment, which he was not. So he has to meet that owner occupied deadline.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Ron Roskinick.
Shannon and I are working maybe on a better process of notifying people when new construction is involved, that there's a mechanism that will be generated at the Planning and Zoning Department that better notifies new homeowners or new construction that there is a benefit of owner occupancy. And right now, I don't think that is very transparent. And me and Shannon and PJ are currently working on that process so that in the future, when somebody builds new construction, they will be very aware that those benefits are out there, and they'll be very aware that if you don't meet that deadline, that you'll suffer the subsequence. In this case, I just think that there could have been better notification from the Planning and Zoning Office and the Assessor's Office of the benefits and the timeline for owner occupancy. Not saying you met it, but I'm just saying there could be better methods of getting that to the general public, especially new construction.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner DeSanto, please.
Mr. Swear,
Yes, sir.
do you recall calling the office on October 25th in response to a door hanger that was left on your property?
I do not recall that far out at all.
Okay, because that was 4.5 months prior to the deadline, and according to our records, you actually called our office in response to the door hanger left at your property, and the appraiser explained to you at that point in time that you needed to get this application in, and you had 4.5 months to do it. And so that's where I'm getting hung up. Ron, I'm with you. I know that notification isn't as great as it could be, but he called our office saying that he got a notification. So, and God bless you for your service, and I love our veterans, and I support our veterans out of my own pocket. But I don't know. I know you're on fixed income
Absolutely.
disability. Are you married?
I am.
Does your wife work?
She just recently picked up another job. Yes, sir.
Okay. And do you have a house payment to make, or is that house free and clear?
The house is free and clear at this time.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Any other discussion? Shannon, there isn't anything we can do about from going from 488 to 8,000. This board cannot drop any of those abatement or anything to help this man?
Going from 400 or 800 or whatever to 8,000 was because the house was assessed partially complete. That happens to every house that's under construction over the assessment date. For the 2018 assessment, for the disabled veterans exemption, no, he would not otherwise have qualified. But I did suggest in the beginning that for 2019, he will have otherwise qualified because the property would be classed or is classed as owner occupied. And I would suggest that if you want to do something for 2019 now instead of waiting until next year for him to come back and have the same argument this time next year.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Drews.
Shannon, once qualified, always qualified, or does he have to qualify each year?
For which? Owner occupied or disabled veteran?
Owner occupied.
Once he's submitted an application, it's classed as owner occupied until the situation changes. And if he were to move somewhere else, we wouldn't know. So pretty much, once qualified, always qualified.
And how about veterans? Does he have to apply every year for that?
No, I guess unless the disability goes away, which we haven't seen any that do, so no. And in fact, that applies to his widow. If he were to die, it would continue on with her until she remarries.
So if we wanted, we can't help him in 18, but we can in 19, so what would be the motion?
The abatement request is for 2018.
Okay,
I don't know what your procedure is. It's your board. I suggested 2019 just simply because I didn't want to do this all over again a year from now.
okay.
I would move to deny the abatement for 2018 and discuss approving the abatement for 2019.
There a second?
I'll second for discussion.
Yep, there
Okay.
you go.
Discussion, please.
I'll
Commissioner LaCroy?
refer to Janet. She looks like she wants to,
We need some help, Janet.
before I comment.
If we could do, if he qualifies, he could come to my office after this is done. We could fill out the paperwork. He could apply under the assessment freeze and come back to the commissioners, just like Mr. Schlinkert just did, even though he didn't do it in a timely manner, because you just approved Mr. Schlinkert. So if he meets the income guidelines, it would roll his assessment back to the year that he became disabled. And I don't have those figures, and I'm sure he doesn't want to give those right now, but
Does it have to be owner occupied?
we have never looked at that, ever. Jay just asked me the same thing.
Thank
'Cause
you,
it's-
Janet.
The
That's
only thing
where-
we look
that's where
at
I
is
was
the
going.
fact that it's in his name.
Okay, so, so we can move this forward. What would be the motion? So we have to deny it today, and then you're gonna go up to Janet's office and she's gonna help you. You got that, Mr. Schwer?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so, do we have a substitute motion?
I think that's the motion we needed. Then he can go up and,
Well, he'll have
is
to
that
come back.
correct, Jay?
He'll have to come back to us, Commissioner
The
DeSanto.
motion I made was the motion that is needed, and then he can go, get everything taken care of with Janet, and then come back here, probably next meeting, and then we can approve whatever he and Janet worked out. Is that correct?
Yeah, as I understand it, the motion would be to deny the abatement based on the application for the
Veterans exemption.
the partial veterans exemption
Right.
/ owner occupied. What Janet just came up here and said, perhaps she'd have to look into it, but perhaps there would be an abatement opportunity under an entirely different statute,
Right.
which was the statute you were dealing with in the prior individual that was up here. And that's the elderly and disabled assessment freeze, which is different than the partial exemption.
So Commissioner DeSanto, I think it's just simpler to deny and then have our staff work with them and bring him back up whenever they're ready. Janet and Mr. Schwer, and then
That
we
was
just
my
make a
motion.
separate motion.
My motion was to deny, and
Okay.
then,
Let's-
and then
Work on
And to
approve for
discuss
the
approving the abatement for
2019
19.
assessment. I can leave that part off if you want to.
If that's okay, if
Okay.
you'd leave it off
I will,
today,
I will
thank you.
make a substitute motion to deny the application for abatement based on the non-owner occupied status. That's all we need, and then.
Is there a
he can-
second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. And Mr. Schwer, you understand that you're gonna go, Janet's gonna help you, sir, and see if she can help you to the next step.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Janet?
And
Or
just,
Jay?
Thank you.
And just so we're clear, as Shannon has a question as to whether or not the elderly and disabled assessment freeze, the owner of that property applies or the unremarried surviving spouse can receive it. We don't have that situation. So the question is Mr. Schlinkert's ownership have to be owner occupied? Or if it's not, does that change the assessment amount that can be frozen? So there's still a legal question. Unfortunately, there's
Okay.
still a question whether or not that will even work or work to the degree one would hope it would.
Just so, at this point, Mr. Swear's getting help, and then we're gonna try to move forward with that, if that's okay, board.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner DeSanto.
understand where you're going, Jay. I think that if he gets this paperwork done today, this year, and we can give him the abatement on 2018, then I believe, Shannon, correct me if I'm wrong, he can come back for next year, apply for the owner occupied status, and the
Disabled veterans exemption?
disabled veterans exemption for 2019 and beyond.
Okay, so for 2019, we're going to mail assessment notices here in maybe 2 weeks.
Okay.
The deadline for the disabled veterans exemption was last November 1st.
Okay.
He provided us an application for that maybe last month. He missed the deadline for 2019. We put it in a file, we keep it, he'll have it for 2020.
Okay.
He, at the same time, last month, brought us in an owner-occupied application. The deadline for that is March 15th. So his property, when we mail assessment notices, it'll be owner-occupied for 2019. I'm not sure if his assessment notice will say that because at some point we got to cut it off. But for 2019, it will be owner-occupied. Okay, so for 2019, he would otherwise have qualified for the disabled veterans exemption, even though he missed the deadline for it. So he could ask the commission for an abatement. What I said at the beginning of this is normally we do that next year when he gets his tax bill. But I don't know as if there's anything in the law that requires that, and I suggested that rather than tell him to come back this time next year, you can take it up here. And I will say what I always say, deadline's a deadline. If you give it to somebody, nobody will meet a deadline. But in this case, for 2019, he would otherwise have qualified.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
It's legal.
Commissioner
It's legal.
LaCroix.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner LaCroix.
he did say that. And we haven't moved forward yet to our next item. So I would suggest that we accept that application. As he stated for the.
Well, I think we can at the next, am I correct? We can do all that at the next meeting. Do we have to do it now? That's what I'm saying. You
I
can
just-
do all that.
I just thought it'd be easier, we'd have it out of the way for 2019 and
I think we got to make sure Janet, when she does her paperwork and does her stuff, Commissioner LaCroix, that's all in that.
She's looking at
correct.
2018,
Okay.
yeah.
and what DeSanto was talking about was 2019.
Correct.
Okay, so
Mr. DeSanto, sorry.
I would move to accept his application for the disabled veterans exemption for 2019.
Second.
okay. Been a motion on the floor, discussion. Ms. Holly, did you have?
I'm just a little nervous that 2019 wasn't specifically on the agenda. And if he's coming back at the next meeting, then we could notice 2018 and 2019's all in one and make sure it's legally noticed on the agenda properly and take care of them both that way. That's just my suggestion.
I withdraw my.
Okay, thank you.
Motion.
I like.
Thanks, Holly.
I like Mr. Commissioner LaCroix and DeSanto, you're trying to help move him forward quick, and I appreciate that, but, I guess that was what I was trying to say to you a little bit, but, okay. So, let's move on. We're on number 3 and 4. Can we take those together, Shannon?
I would suggest you do. That's the easiest. This is what I tell you that we always do this time of year. It takes a while because they have to go to the cities first, and myself and the auditor have to get them worked up. These are the things where the city bought something or somebody's house burned down or something like that.
So we have a motion, if we could, for City of Box Elder abatement, $12,825, and Rapid City for $13,092.80.
So move.
Motion by Drews,
Second.
second by Ross Connect. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Shannon.
I will say that we're getting to the tail end of these. We save these up because we can only do these at this time of year. And right after the first of the year, we do a bunch of them. We'll probably have a few more, but it's going to trickle off and we're going to be done with this stuff here pretty soon.
Thank you, Shannon. And Shannon is very thorough, and he does tell us the laws on everybody, guys, so I think him and his staff do a very good job, guys. And they've helped me on many veterans and elderly people since I've been on this commission to find those solutions. So thank you for all you do. Sometimes we just want to find that exception if we can for some people, Shannon. It's not that you don't do your job or your staff. Thank you, sir. Number 15 is items from Buildings and Grounds. Mike Cool, please.
Good morning. Mike Cool, Pennington County Buildings and Grounds Director. In December, the last Board of Commissioners authorized the Pennington County Jail Expansion and Remodel Project construction contract. Included in that was an alternate for the addition of construction of an addition to the administrative office area of the main jail. What I'm bringing to you today is a proposal for expansion of the jail's detention security control system by Black Creek Integrated Systems Corp. For a total of $237,147. This amount includes that alternate work for that addition. I'm seeking board authorization for this, for the chair's signature to this. If you'd like me to recite
Oh, thank you, Mr. Cool. Do we have a motion, please?
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Ross Connect.
See, Mike, this bid is very detailed. I just wondered, did we get other bids, or how does that work?
We did not get other bids. This is an existing system that controls the detention security within the jail itself. So this is the control system that runs the jail. We don't have a choice. We have to expand the system that we have.
Okay, that answers my
state
question.
statute allows us to do that.
Right. Thank you.
Commissioner LaCroix? Mr. LaCroix first,
Okay.
and Commissioner Sano, please.
Mike, when I was looking over this, I mean, the alternate one, one of the things I noticed is that they're going to use some of the old cameras that were used in the garage, which is kudos to that. You're looking into that. But also, as far as the contractors stated that that doesn't include the conduit and quite a bit of other materials. Now, that stuff is probably included with the electrical bid and mechanical, if I'm correct. I'm assuming that, so everything has to be in place. If anything else isn't there, then they're going to charge us for that.
The way that the contract is set up with the general contractor is essentially all the wiring and pathways through the facility and stuff is a part of the general contractor's bid. Basically, what this does is install the end of line items, so the cameras, connecting door locks and such as that. Anything like that is included there, plus the systems that operate that.
I just to follow up. That's why, when I was looking through this, I was just going, the alternate one, I just see, the cost of the materials, $225, and I see the labor at $5,700, which I understand. And then there's the travel, which is another $5,000 for them to come here and do this. it just looks like, isn't there a way that we could plan this? You know, I'm not quite sure. I'm sure the specialty with all the speakers and the type of stuff that's going to be going on, are they going to be out here before that? So
There's a number of trips built into this, and I think that they're probably associating a particular trip with a particular there, and they've divided that cost in that way. I don't know if would be this is a way that they've determined to break down the
Yeah.
costs. I don't know whether. Do I think that the number of trips that they have included within the contract are necessary? Yes, I do, relative to the way that this project is going to move forward, and likely parts of it being completed at different times.
okay, the 225 for materials and freight. Do you think that is wrong for the amount of work that's being done? Because
It doesn't make sense.
to me, I'm going like, I would find a way to install $225 in parts myself.
I will, we will certainly do whatever we can to minimize that. I mean, I guess that's unfortunate that it comes across that way, but I think it's the way that they decided to break down the costs.
Do you think some of those other parts and materials are included in the original bid?
Well, the alternate, those parts are relatively minor, if I remember correctly. That's
Well,
paging.
let me reword that. I wouldn't say included in the other bid, but since they're doing the other one, they're able to get a reduction in the cost of these because of the other stuff that they're installing. Would that be a better way to interpret that?
The
previous work?
This, I mean, I would say that, yes, there's certainly including that work with the rest of the work that has to go in here substantially cuts the cost of having this work done at an alternate time.
It just shot out at me, folks, when I seen that, and I'm like, I understand, and I've been part of the building committee for quite a while, and I understand you guys are very thorough, but for the normal person, when you're looking at that, I'm just going like, wow, we just need a little bit of background.
What I would say is that the work that will happen associated with that, they will not only be working on that part of the building on that trip. Unfortunately, the way they broke down their costs, I'm sure they gave all for one of those trips, they associated all with that one item, and that isn't necessary.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner DeSanto.
that, Mike, is exactly what I was looking for, what you just said. I mean, Lloyd's point is well taken, $225 worth of material and freight, and they've got to travel here 10 times to to put it in.
Yeah.
I wanted to hear that travel amount is associated with multiple tasks, not this one $225 part they're installing. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Move for approval.
Commissioner? All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Who made the motion?
Commissioner LaCroy and second by Roskinek, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Items from Highway, Joe Miller. Item A, Bridge Design Structure.
Good morning, Commissioner. Joe Miller, Pennington County Highway Superintendent. The first item on your agenda there is the approval for the work order for the bridge or the design on the bridge on Rochford Road.
Can you give us some background, Joe, on that again?
Yes, give me just a moment
On the
here.
bridge?
So a little timeline, I guess it was first thought of back in May of 2004. 2006, there was an agreement between the DOT and Pennington County for the project. Let's see here. The preliminary hydraulics and survey have been done. And it was originally part of the road project. The whole thing was, I guess, that the bridge project was split off in 2010.
Okay.
And it's been in the works for 14 years. So I guess this work order is for the structural design work of the bridge. We need to get the preliminary design done before we can get the categoric exclusion review process done, which can take up to about 90 days. We're running into that on the road project as well. So I guess that's kind of a history in a nutshell.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion, please? Commissioner
Madam
LaCroy.
Chair. I just do want to state, I can't remember when it was November, Mark, where we did some phone conferences on the design and so forth. So I'm glad to see this is coming forward, because that was what we were talking about. The hydrology studies may have to be moved and so forth. But I'm glad we're finally moving forward.
Thank you.
I'd
Do we
make
have-
a motion, but I can't.
Do we have a motion, please?
So move.
Approve.
Motion by Ron Roskinick. Is there, or
Second.
Commissioner Roskinick? Second by Commissioner DeSanto. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. Number 16B, please.
All right, the next item on your agenda is at the request of you guys to bring back the equipment plan that we have put together. One thing to note from the last time was there were 3 options last time, but with the approval of a motor grader and the 5 trucks from the last meeting, the third option was kind of thrown out of there. Basically, Mark and myself and Dan, our shop foreman, have sat down, gone through all of our high dollar equipment. We kind of set that $50,000 mark, which is something we have to go out to bid for at that point. Anything over 50,000, and then we have to come to you guys for approval. I believe it's over 25,000 is kind of where our mark is for the dollar amounts. We have 2 options here. The biggest things to look at is the difference between the 2 options is the motor graders. They are our single highest dollar piece of equipment, that 300 to 325 mark, probably just going to go up from there. So we kind of based our budget around those motor graders and trying to keep those under warranty and keep our liability and our risk at a minimum. So with the option, I believe it's option 1, is keep those motor graders for 7 years and keep those under warranty, which minimizes our risk, and we get more for our trade-ins when we do go to buy that new motor grader. So we'd buy 1 every other year and 2 every other year. So it'd be a 1-2 cycle. And then after 7 years, we'd keep those motor graders under warranty and younger than 7 or newer than 7 years. The next thing to note is our trucks are our next biggest expense at about $180,000. We currently have 32 of those in our fleet. With this, if we purchase, you guys approved the purchase of 5 new trucks last meeting. Going forward, we'd like to purchase 1 a year, and eventually be able to get our fleet down to 24 trucks. Using those in their first part of their lives as gravel trucks, and then after about 7 to 8 years, that mark, we'd transition those to plow trucks, and then kind of sign their death warrant for the next 13 years or so. So that's kind of, and then there's rest of them. We've got loaders in there, mowers, skid steers, and our gravel haul trailers. Those are the items we use regularly and our biggest ticket items.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Any discussion or motion? Commissioner LaCroy?
Madam Chair, thank you. Joe, thanks for bringing this forward as far as the replacement plan. I think that not only helps us out as commissioners, but also your mechanics and your staff and so forth. That really helps if you have a plan and you explain. The other day I was going through some of these numbers. The biggest contentious that this commission has been these graders and so forth. And so I was just kind of doing some numbers. And what I come up with on the plan number 1, if that's the one we followed, just for the graders alone, for the cost, I'm coming up, it's costing us $25,714 per year. For the, and that's minusing out the trading at 140,000 that we're getting. And I broke it down to even more, it's $2,142 a month that we're paying for a grader. You want to break it down daily, it's $72 a month, a day that we pay for a grader. And the reason why I broke it out that way is, number one, these are, if you go with the 7-year warranty plan, $72 a day for a fully warranted vehicle that does the work that those things do and are acceptable to the kind of damages that could happen, or kind of breakdowns that could happen, is a good deal, a really good deal. Considering that this equipment that we're using, I know we like to compare them to our own vehicles and so forth, that we carry them over past the warranties and so forth, but those vehicles are dependent on the owner. They can find alternate ways to work and so forth. We as the county are responsible for emergency situations through snowstorms and so forth, and to have them down and out for any period of time is detrimental. And so that's why I support the first option of the 7-year plan for the warranty work on them. And I think you've all had some good conversations with the maintenance department and understanding how things will work, because if something happens, another way to look at that is if one of them broke down, we could get a loaner at no cost. You know, you can't even get a loaner at $72 a day. So, you know, these are some things that you have to really consider when we're going through these vehicles. And I just wanted to express some of those numbers that I was throwing out to you guys when we start to think about this. I mean, if you start carrying past going to the 10-year and you start getting out of these warranties, you know, I've seen them. I mean, it could be catastrophic. And then you have to stop and wonder, you know, we're responsible for emergency road openings and so forth also, that could affect us. And so that's why I'd rather keep our vehicles in warranty and within, just cycling them out so we don't put ourselves in that spot. And I think the plan with these trucks is the same way. You're trying to reduce them down and cross them over to be able to use them for multiple seasons and other things also is a plus for us. So.
Thank you, Commissioner LaCroix. Also, thank you for the breakdown as well on that. Can we get a motion and
Madam
then
Chair?
more discussion? Motion?
No,
I still had a question.
Okay, so let's have more discussion. Commissioner DeSanto?
I believe that the 10-year option was, showed that the cost of operating came up to almost $2,400 less per year.
That is correct.
And there is an option by one of the suppliers to purchase extended warranties that could take us out all the way to that 10th year.
That is correct. Though at this time, we're still unsure of the cost of what that would be at 10 years.
Okay.
We're currently, one of the manufacturers is out in the wall today doing a demo on their grader, and the other will be out there tomorrow to demo their grader. And
Okay.
we'll get proposals and all that stuff put together to bring back.
And I would assume, Joe, also that you guys would be looking at total cost of operation, including fuel usage, how often these things actually do need to be repaired, how many filters need to be replaced on each separate unit, how many times per year. Like I said, the full cost of keeping these machines. Because we haven't gotten this completely done yet, as far as you're demoing now, and you don't know the price of the additional warranty, I don't think we should decide on an option yet until we have all of the information that we need to make that decision. Because I think there's more information that can be garnered that's important information.
I would agree. I guess just the one thing to say, I guess, out past that 7-year mark, you know, even that warranty is much like an insurance policy. It's who's going to take that risk, right? Though we do not know the cost of that extended warranty, the extended warranty for the machines that we do have cost us about $1,700
Right.
a year to get to that 7-year mark. And then past that, even at that 10-year mark, I believe your value is still going to go down. Your equity, even though it is still under warranty, your equity is still going to go down past that 7-year mark.
But you included that in the estimate that the cost of operation was $2,400 less for the 10-year.
That is correct.
Option.
That is correct. It is less, but with that warranty, like you said, we don't know what the extended warranty costs for that extra 3 years. We will get that information.
Okay. And I guess my point also is that if you're taking that we're going to spend $310,000, if we can keep that $310,000 in our savings account at 3% for an extra 3 years, how much does that allow us in additional spending for that next unit or what have you? Trying to take all things into consideration.
Anything else, Commissioner DeSanto?
No, I'm good.
Commissioner Roskinek,
Madam Chair.
please.
I did some simple math, not quite as detailed as Lloyd's or Mark's. But if we get 2 road graders, and they're just hypothetically, they're new, 620, right?
Roughly, yes.
And if we go with option 1, we're going to get a roughly 130,000 trade-in per unit on option 1. So if you take the trade-in value minus the cost new, you come up with 360,000 net is what we're we're coming up with. If we take the new, subtract the trade-in cost, the net cost is 180,000 per unit. Now, if we go with option 2, a new grader is going to cost $310. We're going to get less of a trade-in because we're going out further. And you indicated the trade would be $86,000. So that'd be $224,000 per unit. So if you take the $224 and I subtract $180 from that, that tells me option 1 is going to save us $44,000 a unit. If we go with option 1, I like option 1. Personally, myself, I think option 1 is a less risk to the county.
Correct, and I would agree with you. That the used motor grader market, indicated by both suppliers that we're considering here, ebbs and flows. Right now, as I stated last meeting, there's a glut of used motor graders on the market. So as those used motor graders get bought up, in 5 years, our used motor graders that are younger than that 7 years could go up, or it could go down. We don't know at this point. The indication right now is anything past that 7 years mark is going to start drastically to drop in value.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Drews.
I would make a motion that we accept option 1.
Motion by Commissioner Drews. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner LaCroy. Any other discussion? I'm thinking if you can bring up beauty supply stuff and stuff like that for next time, it would be a lot better than motor graders for me, but.
Madam Chair.
I know a lot about motor graders now. I'm kidding. Thank you for that information. Actually, that was really good discussion and good breakdown by Commissioner LaCroy and Commissioner Roskinek. Gary Drews, please.
I did my own numbers, and they weren't near as complete as either Commissioner LaCroy or Commissioner Roskinek.
That was my point.
But I appreciated their numbers, and yes, I believe that option 1 is the way to go.
We do have a motion on the floor, and again, good discussion. And I think that really gets us to where and why our highway department agreed with option 1 as well. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed,
No.
motion carries. Oh, you said no? One no with Commissioner DeSanto. Number 17.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Joe.
17A, smoking policy amendment. John
Morning,
Morrell, please.
Commissioners. John Morrell, Pennington County
Morrell.
Human Resource Director. So I've got a couple items here for you today that are basically policy reviews. The first one, 17A, is really around smoking and a recommendation for an amendment or a change, if you will, to our current smoking policy in the employee handbook. The current policy actually, most days is probably sufficient. Anytime there's inclement weather, the temps drops, it starts to rain, it gets very windy. That's when we run into some situations where it causes concern for citizens that are visiting our building. It doesn't in the current policy, and it's in the memo that I had there, it doesn't specify any distance or any locations. There's nothing that actually talks about what those restrictions may be. The recommended updates actually include some additional data. So you'll see the current policy in the middle of the memo. You'll see the recommended update for the employee handbook in the lower section of the memo. In addition, if you will, I'll go to about the midpoint of the first paragraph under the updated policy. It says, in addition to the prohibition, because the first three lines are actually the same existing policy. In addition, this prohibition provides that no smoking shall be permitted at any public entrance to or exit from a county building or facility, and that prohibition extends 20 feet from any public entrance or exit. So again, we're actually putting some distances in there where it specifies people can't smoke at the entrances or exits, the public entrances or exits to our buildings. And it also specifies who it applies to. So this directive shall apply to all employees, clients, visitors, or persons otherwise required to be in a county building, facility, or vehicle. Employees found to have violated the policy will be subject to disciplinary action up to and including termination. That line sounds harsh. Here's what I will share with you. The purpose of that line, and that's common with most policies regarding personal behaviors at work. It's not an automatic termination the first time they may be smoking near the door. Generally speaking, that's a progressive process where you may have somebody that initially smokes in the door, then it's too cold to be by the door, so they come inside and maybe light them. It ends up being multiple occurrences. The termination isn't an automatic, so I want to be sure to clarify that. And then again, what we're looking for here is with approval of the board, that we would actually adopt this provision, the updated policy for the employee handbook as presented. Stand for questions and comments.
Discussion, please.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved by LaCroix, second by DeSanto. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries.
Thank you,
Next
Commissioners.
is the Pennington County Annual Performance Reviews, Policy and Procedures.
Yes, so
John
this
Morrow.
one is actually continued from our last meeting on February 5th. What we've done is actually reviewed and added some additional verbiage, if you will, to take into consideration the two directors that we have working for the county that aren't county employees. And also we added some additional verbiage to address the Department of Equalization. State statute requires that you visit with the department or the Director of Equalization the first meeting in each April. And again, that's under statute under SDCL 10-3-14. What we've done here actually on this updated policy is add a provision on page 2 of the policy, if you will, under section 3, item A. It actually speaks about the Department of Equalization and that they would still meet with you as required under statute in April, but also that there would be a follow-up session with the board to actually discuss their performance on a more general basis, as you do with other department heads, during the 30-day period prior to his or her hire date to discuss their actual performance and confirm annual compensation adjustments. So that part was added to ensure that we're complying with state law as well as still providing an actual meeting with the Department of Equalization, or the Director of Equalization, excuse me, to address their performance and compensation issues. The other things that we've done with the updates here, under the middle of the second page where it says department heads that serve at the pleasure of users boards, we've actually added specific language there where it identifies those departments. So you'll see the 911 dispatch center, emergency management, fire, weed and pest, and as well as the public defender's office. And then at the lower part of that page is where we actually address the two current department heads that are non-county employees. And it says that this section shall apply to non-county employee department heads that serve on county roles, and it identifies again 911 and emergency management department heads that we currently have in place. The rest of this document actually specifies how that would be handled. So I won't go through that in any detail here at this point. I'm hoping that you've had a chance to review that. And again, what we're asking is for review and approval of this updated policy or process to make sure that we can address all department heads within the county, whether they work for us directly or work for another body.
Thank you, John. Do we have a motion or discussion, please?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Drews?
I would move to approve the updated department head annual performance reviews policy and procedure as presented.
Motion by Drews, second by DeSanto. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Thank you, John, for all your work.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner DeSanto.
move for a 5-minute break.
Let's do number 18 first,
Okay.
if we could, sir, and then 5 minute. Thank you, sir.
Good. Fails due to lack of second.
Then we'll go into Board of Adjustment, and then we can take a break, sir. Commissioner, or Ms. Hennies, please.
Commissioners, what you have before you again is the draft of the commission bylaws and rules of procedure. There have been no changes made from the last version that you saw at the last meeting. So at this point, I will stand for any more questions or ask for a motion for approval.
I would move to approve.
Commissioner LaCroy, there's been a motion, sorry, Commissioner LaCroy, there's been a motion by DeSanto, second by Roskinick. Commissioner LaCroy, please.
Thank you. I'd asked to have this continued from our last meeting for a couple different reasons to kind of go over, but, and thank you, Holly, for adding the code of conduct to the agenda also, because I think, you know, in the bylaw rules and procedures, it refers to the code of conduct. And if you go through this explicitly talks about how commissioners should conduct themselves respectfully and to each other and so forth. I'm not going to go through all that stuff, but I do have some questions for Jay.
Is Jay here? Yep. Sorry, Jay, you're hiding, or Heidi. Holly was hiding too. Hiding Holly.
This is just clarification for ourselves. You know, over the last few years, you know, we talk about emails between commissioners and we talk about if there's 5 on there, it could be construed as a meeting and so forth when there's discussion, which is very true. Just for clarification for all of us that are here today, what happens if I decide I want to communicate and I want everybody to hear the same message? Because trying to do to two, everybody hears it different or sees it different. If we put on our email for informational purpose only, do not respond, and do it to all 5 commissioners because it's just for information. Say, I want everybody to know something.
Is that legal?
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's back and forth in the same email, the same chain, same everything. But I just like all of us to get on the page that if we put like informational only, do not respond, I've got a message just to share with you, but either.
So is that legal is what he's asking?
Jay Alderman with the State's Attorney's Office. We have operated under the presumption that here's a notice of something, information only, is not a discussion. Because you're not asking for discussion. I don't want you to reply to me. I don't want you to discuss it amongst yourselves with 38 different emails firing back and forth. I can do the same thing. I can send something to the commission as a body, which is information only, and make it very clear that I'm not asking for any input. I'm not asking you to discuss it. In fact, I don't want you to discuss it amongst yourselves, because I think that would be clearly a violation of the open meetings rules, which is also highlighted, or is referenced, I should say, in the bylaws, if you notice. The only exception that I'm aware of in that same, what's the title of that again, just so for the record? Conducting the public's business in public. and it's put out by the Open Meetings Commission, Attorney General's Office, et cetera. The only exception I'm aware of is for scheduling purposes only. Apparently, you can have an email discussion amongst yourselves only for the purpose of, hey, are you available Tuesday? We need to schedule a special meeting, and that's it. You're not discussing the underlying merits of any one particular agenda item. Just when are we going to hold the meeting? You can do that. And the same kind of goes, they don't talk about it, but we've always felt the same kind of goes for oral communications over the phone. Same deal. You don't want to get into discussion of the county business. That's only meant for this board in this room. You had something?
Oh, if you wanted to read the actual response that the Attorney General has for Lloyd's question, I can do that out of the pamphlet.
I think I've got that.
You have any more follow-up, Lloyd? I think you had a couple
No,
items.
I was just trying to get some clarification, so we're all on the page, because one thing I've learned in the last 2 years of talking to the Jay and lawyers is everybody that reads these things has a different interpretation, can have a possibly different interpretation of what it means. And all 5 of us are here today are going to hear the same thing, and that's why I brought it up, so that we could all be on the same page and not question each other.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And that's what we just ask that you utilize staff for. If you have information to share with the Board of Commissioners, if you send it through staff, that way it's on record and we can make sure it's disseminated to all in the same manner, in the same fashion.
Yeah.
And that general umbrella rule, if you're not sure, don't do it and ask the question first. Ask it of me, Holly.
Yeah.
That's always the safest way to approach it.
Thank you, Jay and Ms. Holly. Do we have a motion, please?
You guys got a motion.
We
for
had a
approval.
motion
Oh,
already.
DeSanto,
One-
Ross Connect.
one-
I apologize.
One other thing that I had was the use of abstention. In the past, we've had problems with people abstaining, sitting and discussing, going through the discussion, and then all of a sudden, towards the end, saying they abstain from the vote. And in my belief, when you know there's a problem or there's an abstention, you should voice it right off the bat, because you shouldn't be involved in the discussion. And I won't go through all of this, but we've got 2 different sections in here on abstention. One for if you feel you have a financial interest, so forth, and then there's another one detail in there. And I just thought I've always been the belief to abstain, you have some type of financial or other interest. But I just want us as a commission to all be on the same page. If you're going to abstain, you abstain from the discussion, you do it at the beginning. That's my
And the commission actually passed a policy of that even long before these bylaws were drafted or the code of conduct that says exactly that. If you're going to abstain, you're going to know that before that agenda item even comes up typically. Certainly if it comes up and you recognize something, you abstain right away because you're not supposed to engage in the discussion at all, or obviously the vote. And that would be whether it's an executive session matter or it's out here on the dais. So you're absolutely right. Abstain is considered, you're not voting. It's like you're not even present because your vote's not counted. You can't be compelled to vote. But if you're going to abstain, let everyone know it and don't discuss or vote.
Those were my only 2 questions, and I wanted to delay the break.
You,
Thanks, Lloyd.
our little talker today. Good discussion today, though. I appreciate it. We do have a motion. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Now, Mr. DeSanto.
I make a motion that we take a 5-minute break.
Okay, motion for 5 minutes.
Second.
Second by Ross Connect. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 5-minute break. Be back. Let's go ahead and go into a motion to go in Board of Adjustment, please.
Move to go into the Board of Adjustment.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Conover, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. P.J. Conover, Director of Planning Department. The item before you right now is item A. which is variance 1901 for Edward Hicks, Faith Lewis as the agent, to reduce the minimum required lot size from 40 acres to 6.68 acres in the general agriculture district. The other part of this applicant's request will be heard actually through the consent calendar under a minor plat. But right now, one of those conditions of the minor plat is to either rezone the property or receive a lot size variance. The applicant has chosen to go through the lot size variance option, so that's what's before you today. The agent is Faith Lewis, as mentioned before, and the surveyor engineer is Anderson Engineers. The subject property, the parent parcel, is over 140 acres, and what they're looking to subdivide is a small portion on the northeast, or the northeast side, just over 6 acres. The property contains a single-family residence and some outbuildings. However, the subject property that they're looking to subdivide off only contains some small outbuildings and a shed that was built prior to 1982. There is special flood hazard area on the subject property, and that shed is located in the special flood hazard area. It appears to be under the requirements for a building permit, so we don't have any concerns there. There would normally be a concern with a structure inside the special flood hazard area, but because it was built prior to 1982, prior to our insurance maps, it is considered a pre-firm structure and basically one way of saying legal non-conforming for flood purposes. This request was also routed through the interdepartmental review. One item of note that came back was from the county environmental planning supervisor was that if any work is to be done in the special flood hazard area, that special permits are needed. And a note from the Forest Service, they sent 10 comments, but I'll just mention the first one, that the Forest Service will not approve a secondary access across National Forest System's land to private property, basically because there's already an access approved off of Dix Creek Road. With variances, there are 4 criteria that need to be met. The first item is that specific circumstances or condition, such as exceptional narrowness, topography, or siting exist. Staff has verified through a site visit there's no particular conditions as noted above which warrant approval of the lot size variance. The applicant could add more property to the proposed Hicks tract, and then a lot size variance would not be required and could instead rezone to a different zoning district. The second requirement is that variances does not grant a use which is otherwise excluded from a particular district. This lot size variance would not grant a use which is otherwise excluded in a general agriculture district. The third item is that due to special circumstances or existing conditions, strict application of zoning ordinances would be an unwarranted hardship. Strict application of the zoning ordinance would require the existing property to meet the minimum lot size requirement of 40 acres in a general agriculture district or be rezoned to an appropriate zoning district. The fourth requirement, that granting a variance is not contrary to a public interest and is in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance. Granting this lot size variance does not appear to be contrary to the public interest, but would allow a property that is 6.68 acres in a general agriculture district. If this individual was to rezone, they'd have to go down to, as far as lot size goes, go down to low-density residential, which has a 3-acre minimum. As you can see in the analysis section, which is section 8 on page 7 of 7, and this map doesn't even show it, the closest low-density residential district is over 4.5 miles away. The closest property, which is, or group of properties which is mainly used for residential purposes, which is a mobile home park, is a planned unit development, which is just over 1.5 miles away. So if the individual was to pursue a rezone to some type of appropriate zoning for lot size, it would be residential. But there is no residential zoning even remotely in the area. There is use, however.
Sorry, PJ,
Yeah.
do you have a zoning map?
This is one right here. As you can see, it's surrounded basically by general agriculture.
So there is no other, that's the whole zoning area? There's no suburban anywhere from somebody putting like another 40-acre lot with 5 acres for their family or anything in that area?
Not close. There are residential properties out there not zoned residential. The closest residential property would either be the mobile home park at 1.8, which is a planned unit development, or low-density residential, which is over 4.5 miles away.
I guess my question is on limited ag or any kind of ag. Do we have any lot split out in any 5-acre areas for, you know, in any of that limited ag, kind of like, it looks like they're doing, they want a 6-acre. Do you know what I mean?
This is not the largest and it's not the smallest in the area. There's more that are probably bigger than this 6.68 acres.
Okay.
What I was getting at, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, because there's a lot of people that if they have limited ag or general ag, they split off a lot for their house, like 5 acres and stuff like that on those acreages, and I just didn't know if this was one of those exceptions or what they were doing as well.
Yeah. So what I was getting at with the residential properties is the only other really choice for this applicant to meet the lot size is to rezone to either a planned unit development or a low-density residential. But to do that, staff would consider that spot zoning because it's not compatible with the existing zoning in the area. Compatible with some of the uses, but not the existing lots in the area, as indicated that the closest residential property is over 4.5 miles away. So if the Board of Adjustment approves variance 1901, staff does not recommend any conditions be included, as any concerns or requirements are being addressed through the planning process.
I would move for approval.
Second.
Then a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
Motion to come out of Board of Adjustment, please.
So move.
Moved by Drews,
Second.
second by LaCroy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Consent agenda, Mr. PJ.
Yes, ma'am. The Board of Commissioners uses a consent agenda to act on non-controversial and routine planning and zoning items quickly. The consent agenda is acted upon by one motion and vote of the board. Items may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda at the request of a board member or a citizen. The consent agenda for planning and zoning contains the following items. Item B, second reading of rezone 1810 and comprehensive plan amendment 1809 for Rustler's Ranch LLC, Davis Engineering as the agent, and approval has been recommended. Item C, minor plat MLP 1902 and subdivision regulation variance SV 1901 for Edward Hicks, Faith Lewis as the agent, and approval has been recommended.
Is there anybody from the public who wish to remove any item number B or C from the consent agenda? At this time, is there any commissioner who wish to remove any item from B and C on the consent agenda for further discussion? If not, a motion, please.
Move for approval.
Motion by LaCroy, second by DeSanto. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're on regular items D through H. Number D, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. Brittany Molitor, Environmental Planning Supervisor. Item D is a layout plat request to subdivide one existing lot into 4 lots. As the property exists today, it consists of a 21.39 acre lot. It is zoned limited agriculture district. It does have access off of West Highway 44 via an existing approach. However, through conversation with the DOT, they are not going to allow any further approaches off of there. So in this plat, they have dedicated a 66-foot wide easement for access to the other 3 lots. There is no special flood hazard area on the property, and there are 2 of the lots, B and C, contain residences. One was built in 1920 and one was built in 1991. The ranges of lot size are from 2.714 acres to 8.249 acres. This was routed through the interdepartmental review process. Only a couple items of concern came up. There were some comments from the Register of Deeds and equalization on some plat heading requirements, and also indicating in the plat heading that there is a well lot on the property. And then the comments again from DOT. Staff is recommending approval of this layout plat with 14 conditions. There is a request later in the agenda that will require, that they are requesting a rezone for these lots.
Thank you, Ms. Brittany. Do we have a motion or discussion?
I make a motion to approve.
Motion by Ross Connect. Is there a second, please? Second by LaCroy.
Second.
Any other discussion? How about any of the applicant or the public that would like to comment on this item D? Did anybody from the public? No? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, motion carries. Item E, please.
Item E is first reading and public hearing of rezone 1710 and comprehensive plan amendment 1709. Again, this is to bring into compliance these lots for the plat. It will meet one of the conditions of the plat. It is to rezone 21.39 acres from limited agriculture district to suburban residential district. Again, this property does abut suburban residential district to the west. It is predominant in the area, so it is in harmony with the area. So staff is recommending approval of rezone 1710 and comprehensive plan amendment 1709.
Thank you, Ms. Brittany. A motion or discussion, please?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Ross Connect. Is there a
Second.
second by Drews? Discussion? Any discussion by the applicant or the public? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Number F, please.
Good morning, Cassie Bolstead, Assistant Planning Director. Item F is a layout plat request. This is LPL 1901. This is a request to combine 4 lots to create Union Hill Climax. The applicant is Donald Patno. The landowner is Jane Patno. As this property exists today, it is for mining claims. All are zoned general agriculture district. There is no special flood hazard area on any of these properties, and all 4 of them are currently vacant. What they are proposing to do is just to combine all 4 of these lots into a lot that would be 40.51 acres. Does meet the minimum lot size requirement for a general agriculture district, so they will not be required to rezone or do a lot size variance at this time. And access to the proposed lot is provided via a 40-foot wide private access easement that was existing before this plat. This was routed through the interdepartmental review process. Just a couple things that I want to note that came back. The County Highway Department stated that the landowner must obtain access easements or right-of-way to Burnt Fork Road or China Gulch Road if they're not already obtained to prevent this parcel from being an isolated tract. I did confirm with the Forest Service that there are private road easements in place to allow access to actually all of these properties in this area, but the proposed property in particular. The Register of Deeds would like them to propose a different legal description at the minor plat phase, something along the lines of Union Hill Group Tract or Union Hill Tract. That was added as a condition of approval. And then Emergency Services stated that they have no concerns with the consolidation, but the private drive that provides access will need to be given a name and address is issued accordingly if and when they decide to build on this property. So if they decide to build a residence on this property, they will be looking at renaming this. There are a couple other houses that take access off of this 40-foot wide access easement. They are currently addressed off of Log Cabin Road, but 911 is saying if you put one more house down there, they're going to want this road to have a different name, which is something that can be addressed through the building permit process and is also a condition of this plat. So per the document submitted by the applicant, the sole reason for this consolidation is to reduce property taxes, and the proposed plat will decrease density in the area by 3 lots. So for the purposes of a layout plat, staff does not see any issues with this. And so staff and the Planning Commission recommended approval of layout plat LPL 1901 with 11 conditions.
Thank
That
you,
would be
Ms.
my
Cassie.
motion.
Motion by DeSanto.
Second.
Second by LaCroy. Any discussion?
Yes.
Commissioner Ross Cadet.
Okay, so the 40-acre tract, if it was replatted, would be accessed via a 40-foot wide private access easement.
Yep.
And then just refresh my memory, where does that tie into? And then where does that tie into? And how long before you finally get to the Deerfield Road?
So the 40-foot wide access easement ties into Log Cabin Road. Log Cabin Road, from my recollection, I believe ties into Burnt Fork Road, which ties into China Gulch Road, which then ties into Deerfield Road.
And how many of those roads are maintained by the county?
That part I do not know.
My only concern, I mean, I don't have any problems, 1 40-acre tract, 4 10-acre lots, but when it comes to emergency management, getting back into this thing, if they build a nice residence back there, and I assume that'll be addressed when they get the building permit, but I just really had a hard time the vision if I wanted to go see that property, how I'd get there.
Yes, yep, and I think that's why 911 would like it addressed is for ease of emergency services, obviously, so that they know that there's a different, you have to veer off of Log Cabin Road, not continue on Log Cabin Road.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? We do have a motion by DeSanto, second by LaCroy. I'm sorry, does the applicant or the public have any discussion on this item? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Item G, please.
Thank you. Good morning. Item G is rezone 1812 and comprehensive plan amendment 1811 to rezone 19.419 acres from general agriculture district to general commercial district for proposed lot 1, and to rezone 1.953 acres from general agriculture district to general commercial district for proposed lot 2. The Planning Commission did recommend to deny without prejudice rezone 1812 and comprehensive plan 1811, and the Board of Commissioners did approve the first reading of this rezone and comprehensive plan amendment on February 5th, 2019. So I'd entertain any questions with the second reading.
Commissioner Roskinek, did you had some information?
Yes, I've been working, since the last meeting, I've met with the applicant or an agent thereof and the adjacent landowners. Obviously, there is a concern. I did, the last meeting, I did approve for the general commercial zoning, but then I wanted to see if there could be some kind of compromise between the owner's agent and the landowners, to be fair, they're in my district. I think they're working on some type of an understanding, and I don't think that's complete yet. I'd like to, I guess I'm going for a motion to continue until the landowners and the owner or the owner's agent can draft up a document where there's some kind of guarantee to the area landowners that they get some protection from. I don't know who the prospective buyer is going to be. I don't know what the intended use is going to be. There's a lot of unknowns, and I hate to rush into this until the two can work together in the next 2 weeks and hopefully bring it to the next meeting.
We have a
I'll
motion
second
to
your motion
continue.
for continuance.
He talks, so he can't make the motion. Would you like to make the motion?
I'll make a motion to
Commissioner
continue.
DeSanto for
March 5th.
continuance? Do we have
Second.
Board of Commissioners.
Second by Drews. Thank you, Commissioner DeSanto. There's no discussion on a continuing motion. Does the applicant and the public know that this will be continued for trying to find solution? Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, motion carries. Item H, please.
Just 1 second, ma'am. Item H is an informational item only. It's for a letter of map revision, 18-08-0912P. This is an area outside of Hill City. Basically, a letter of map revision is an application sent into FEMA to physically change the special flood hazard delineations on a map and also change officially the base flood elevation. Sometimes this is confused with a letter of map amendment, which doesn't change the map, but a LOMAR, letter of map revision, actually does. This is the affected area of the map that we got from FEMA. This is actually an aerial of the area showing the affected properties that are involved or that have the special flood hazard area on their property. Rushmore Forest Products is right here. So give you kind of an idea of where we are.
I see your marker now.
Yep. Does that help you?
Middle of that big, yep.
Okay. So every one of the properties that are highlighted received a letter from the agent that was working on this for Rushmore Forest Products, letting them know what was occurring. Essentially what is happening is some of the base flood elevations in this area off of Spring Creek are going down, and some of the base flood elevations are going up. A lot of this has to do with the new culverts that were put in, but primarily there was an engineer that was doing some numbers and had been doing work down here quite often and submitting information through our office to FEMA using incorrect data. FEMA caught it. We had a meeting with them over the phone with their engineers. He's been corrected, and this is part of that corrective process of bringing this area more into what it's supposed to be. Now, it doesn't affect all of Spring Creek. Again, this is just a highlighted area of where it is. It's just a small little portion of this entire area, as you can see here outlined with this solid line. That's the only area that's officially changing right now. Some parts of the special flood hazard area increased by almost 6 feet, and some of it actually went down by about 4 feet. The other change is that some of the floodway, which is the red slashed area, has gotten wider, covering more land mass. And the special flood hazard area, the 100-year, the blue has gotten a little bigger as well, which is a normal when they're recalculating everything. So this was just a little informational item for the commissioners.
Commission, any questions?
Madam Chair,
Roskinek?
PJ, if I'm looking at that area that you're talking about, what commercial enterprises would currently be located along that corridor? Would it be safe to say the firehouse, their new wine tasting and Naked Winery, would those be the businesses that were probably in that area that you're talking about?
Well, primarily the areas that are affected are, well, I'll tell you what, right here is where the firehouse is.
Okay.
And the area of the map that's actually changed just basically comes up to the property like that. So it touches the property, but it doesn't affect the rest of it to the west, only that tiny little bit to the east. Most of this was primarily done for Rushmore Forest Products. I mean, they're the ones that applied
Okay.
for it.
So once if this is changed, which it sounds like it's going to be, then what would happen if it would have some adverse impact on existing commercial businesses located along that corridor?
Well, I'm not sure what the adverse impact would be. Anybody building in a special flood hazard area would have to do a new floodplain development permit.
I'm just talking about existing businesses.
Yeah. Well, I think regardless of what these numbers say, Mother Nature's going to do anyway.
Fair enough.
But it gives us better measurements for when they do apply. We have best available data now for this area. And it's usually one engineer that has worked primarily in this area. So anybody else who's going to develop in the special flood hazard area along this corridor usually uses the same person, and now he has more updated data that he can provide us with.
I know a lot
more
of the
accurate
business
information.
owners along there, and they go, why is this changing? You know, like there's a study done 20 years ago, and then a study, a lot of studies, and they're saying, what is changing to make the study results change? So I just, if I could give them an answer, I'd be more than happy to know what the.
Usually it's to help facilitate extra construction on properties, usually to lower insurance rates by lowering the base flood elevations. I'm sure, I know that that has some of it to do with what happened, but more of a corrective action because of bad information.
So one of those studies was basically just faulty.
The old ones?
Or one of them.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and FEMA has admitted that, and especially in this area. This corridor is, for lack of a better term, a pet project for FEMA.
Okay.
Yep.
So I guess because I remember the Naked Winery coming in on us because of some changes, but was that FEMA changed?
No.
Or that was?
That was their request through inter-office permits, but nothing through FEMA.
And I believe why it changed it, if you look at the size of that culvert, the CFS and everything else, and what that culvert did in that area, cleaned up some areas, but you already know the flow coming in and the flow coming out is going to be different. So that's why I believe that's going to change that whole area coming in and coming out, and who's going to get flooded more and who's not.
Well, six
So-
feet's a lot.
Dark blue lines represent?
I'm sorry, sir?
What's the dark blue lines represent?
So the dark blue is the area of the special flood hazard area, so that's the 100-year area. So that's like
Okay.
the outside barriers.
That is.
So if you go here, you can see it as well. It just doesn't have the aerial underneath it. Yep. And then the red slashed, which you see here, is the floodway, which is kind of the flow of the flood. And the blue is kind of where the water just
So the
spreads
floodway,
out.
we know you can't build in or not supposed to build in. The 100 years, there has to be a flood base elevation when you're building. And then the 500, you're good. Any other follow-up? Commissioner Drews?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Roskinek?
Is this survey done? Is there a date on the map, or is that still in the process?
So for this Lomar, it is done. It has been approved by FEMA, and it won't take effect until June.
So if I go on Rapid Map and I look at it,
You won't see it
I
yet.
won't see it until June.
I think it was June 19th is when it goes into effect. June 17th, sorry. So they should change their maps June 17th or 18th. And then they'll send us the layers. It'll go over to our GIS department in Rapid City, and then it'll
So if someone in that area wants to see that map now.
come to
that
our
map-
office.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, we're the deposit.
What's the
depository for that.
effective date then on the map?
June 17th, 2019.
Okay.
Any other discussion?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner LaCroy.
I just wanted to follow up on Ron's question, you know, when you asked why they decided to study. It seems like I remember seeing a few, some are requested by, I've seen some requested by property owners that have been, so they actually do the request, maybe something's changed and then, so they do it. That's pretty much, and then the why you want to redo the studies is, I mean, we're having problems in our, with water runoff. I mean, development changes, things change over the years, and we're getting more stormwater runoff than we have before, which affects a lot of that stuff. So, I mean, I think those are some of the reasons why that I think of.
Thank you, Commissioner LaCroy. Any other discussion? Thank you, PJ, for that information. I think it's good that the commission knew it changed and that the new commissioners know why, and again, so their constituents know of that reason as well. So thank you for the update.
Okay, thank you.
Number 20 is items from chair commission members. Holly, do we have anything pending or anything that we need informational for the next meeting for this commission to know? Okay.
No, the only thing I'd like to mention to the commission, though, it's more a committee thing, but Governor Nome, the chamber is hosting Governor Nome on February 28th. I have one commissioner that's RSVP'd for it, so if you do want to attend, I need to get your ticket purchased within the next day or two. So if you would like to attend on February 28th, it's a luncheon. Just please let me know and I'll get your ticket.
Thank you. Commission members? Anything pending right now that you need to bring up besides your committees, which will be on the next, number 21?
I went to my first fire board meeting.
Okay,
That-
hold on just a sec, Commissioner. This is just like something that isn't on committee. Commissioner Roskinick, and we'll do committees next.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Where are we at now?
We're going to Mr. LaCroix on committee reports.
Oh, I thought you were gonna ask if there was something that we want to bring up, is what you said.
Go ahead and, LaCroix, go ahead and do both if you'd
I just
like
think
now.
something we should have a discussion on is the resolution on Pennington County elected official wage policy. I don't know if we need to do that next meeting or whenever the chair and vice chair would like to. I'd like to have that discussion.
Would you like us to have that discussion and bring it forth next meeting? Is that your request? On the wage study and when that's going to happen and what's going to happen with
I
it?
mean, I think we need to get the elected official, I think we've talked about talking with John about commissioners, but I'm talking all the elected. That's what, I think we need to have a good discussion on that.
I think throughout the county, I think the elected and the non-elected as well, for just wage study, just what's coming up and when's the next one for anybody that works for the county, including elected officials. So I think what me and Gary can do is do an update on that with John and move that forward to the next meeting, if that's okay, Commissioner LaCroix?
At this time, yeah.
And how about your committee report, sir?
We have a collective healing meeting today at 6 at the Mother Butler Center. If anybody's interested in going to that, that's getting down to the point where I won't, bore you with a lot of the details until we actually get down to it. It's separated down from the police department to the community, and they're coming up with focus groups to work on issues and goals, and then they're going to be presenting them. This is probably about the third stage of that meeting. The other meeting I went to was me and Gary both attended the Fair Board was it last Monday? So that went very well, big turnout. Looks like there's going to be a couple openings on the board. Probably let Gary, I gave Gary some of the numbers if he wants to share them, but I think we've all went through the numbers. But I think that's all I need to report for today.
Thank you, Commissioner LaCroix. Commissioner DeSanto, please.
Attended the Extension Board meeting. There was quite a lot of discussion about interviews for a new Extension supervisor position. I believe that probably coming up sometime mid-March, we'll be seeing those interviews come through, and we'll be making decisions on that. I have requested, and I'm going to contact, I had spoken to Lindell about being on that board to elect a new supervisor, and he seemed open to it, but I haven't called him since I talked to the 4-H extension group about that, so I need to make a call to Lindell and let him know that they are all for him also helping to select that new lead. And then they also, because they haven't had that supervisor position filled, they have some additional funds in their budget, and we had some discussion about where they'd like those funds to be spent this upcoming 2019 year. So they'll present that to you, I believe, in mid-March, our second meeting in March. We'll find out where they want to go with that. So that's my report.
Nice. Commissioner Ron Roskinick, your turn.
Okay. Sorry, got out of line.
You're good.
As I was saying, I attended my first fire board meeting at Doty and got to meet some very old friends there that had been in the fire service for probably over 30 or 40 years. And I introduced myself and told them I wasn't quite as good looking as their former committee member, but they just have to put up with it. One of the things that was discussed was the state's participation in a radio communication fund. And one of the members of at this meeting, they suggested that Governor Nome be written a letter thanking her for, I think the government, the state wants to participate in assisting in this radio communication fund. So I got together, basically I got together with Jerome and Holly, and they drafted a letter that we'd like to send to the governor, thanking her for her support in this particular cause.
Holly, is that on our next agenda or?
It's on the next actual agenda item, ma'am.
Next item.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So that's my brief report.
Good thing I didn't look past that. Thank you, Commissioner Roskinick, for all your work. Commissioner Drews.
I'll just do a quick follow-up on Lloyd's report on the Fair Board. One of the things that I found interesting is Jim Hunt shared this relative to the horse sale. Horse sale was not record-breaking, but it was very high again. And he said that the two main horse sales are held here and at Fort Worth. And the top horses sold here brought more than they did at Fort Worth, which is a big feather in their cap. Wow. So that's great to hear. They just keep improving things out there. I was really impressed with how well everything ran for as much activity that's going on. And quite frankly, I enjoyed much of the Black Hill Stock Show myself, too.
Nice.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Drew. Me and Commissioner Drews went to the MPO meeting. In your box, I had Holly print off the Human Services Transportation Plan, which does affect Rapid Valley in a few of our areas, so I wanted to make sure all the commissioners saw that on the report. I also had Ms. Holly, thank you, Ms. Holly, print out the traffic studies. Something to keep in your box for future, just in case you had any questions on that. Kip from the city works on the MPO and the DOT, and is Brad, and Mark is the federal person from our committee. Our goal this year is to work with all three of those entities, city, federal, and state, to put us on the map for areas that we would like help with. Our highway department supervisor or department head, Joe Miller, is going to have meetings with them, and after that, we will consult with Joe Miller, commission chair and vice chair, and see where we can go in the future with his goals and what this commission goals are. So anything that you see on any of these areas for MPO, please give that list to Holly or me or Gary, and we will bring that forward for your district so we can get us on the map and make sure Pennington County is getting well represented in the MPO. Number 2 is we have somebody's birthday today. Commissioner LaCroix is 25 today. And Commissioner Ross Connect got you a little present, and we got you.
Oh, jeez.
Happy birthday, Commissioner LaCroix.
Thank you, guys.
Any follow-up, Commissioner LaCroix?
Happy birthday, Lloyd.
No, the only, I dreaded it being on the same day as the commission meeting. That only happens once every 7 years, right? So we'll be all right.
Well, I remember when we were on the city council and it was your birthday on that, and of course, we were very nice to Mr. LaCroix that time.
I was 40 then.
Whoa. Now you're 25, you're doing good.
Thank you, guys, I appreciate it.
Happy birthday, Commissioner LaCroix. All right, next is, number 22, 2019 legislative session. Update on proposed bill session activity. Ms. Holly, do you have anything to share, please? Or Commissioner Drew, sorry.
I've
I
actually
think she's throwing it at me.
It'd be you, Commissioner.
I think there's a number of bills that certainly would have an impact for us. But I think one of the most interesting ones is actually Senate Bill 4, which has passed the Senate and is now in the House, but it's a hog house. So the bill body has changed since it was originally introduced. But now, basically what it's trying to do is establish a property tax pilot program to address agriculture property taxation. There's a professor at SDSU that has brought forth his study, and he concluded that the areas of western South Dakota are unfairly being taxed at higher crop rates and should be taxed at the lower range rate of taxation. And so Custer County, Fall River County, and Pennington counties are the 3 counties that have been selected, if this bill passes, as it is, to be in the pilot program. And this would hopefully try to create fairness of the agriculture property taxation in South Dakota. So it's an interesting bill. It could have sizable impact depending on if they get to the study and what the study reveals. Most of or a good share of the legislation that may have an interest to us is still in the works, getting out of the first body into the second body. There is one, House Bill 1160, which Ron Busgrud had indicated was going to be introduced. And this is where, like with the proposed pipeline, where they're coming through the various counties with that pipeline, currently, if you had protests that you had to pay for the law enforcement cost and so forth, you would be responsible for up to a 2 mil cost before it would go into the state funds. And 2 mil for Pennington County is over $17 million. And so this bill is that has been introduced and is now in the House State Affairs Committee would reduce that from 2 mils down to a half mil, which would still be considerable dollars, but it would help a lot in those type of instances. And obviously that not only impacts Pennington County, but any county where that pipeline may come through. One of the others that is working its way through is Senate Bill 65. This would provide for construction, renovation, improvement, remodeling, alteration, additions, and repairing of courthouses, jails, incarceration reduction facilities, and others. This may not be all that important to us at this point in time, but what it would do is create the half-cent bid, booze, and board tax, much like the municipalities have. And I know that there's a lot of the smaller counties that would really appreciate having an opportunity to have that at their disposal for things that they need to do at their facilities. I've got several others, nothing that really is, that stands out at this point in time. If anybody has questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Commissioner LaCroy?
Mine has to do with, Mark, do we know anything more on that bill about tiny homes? I can't remember the name of the bill that
Oh, the,
Lynn brought forward.
yeah, I don't know more about it at this point in time. About the, what are they called? Park model homes.
Park model homes, yeah.
Park model homes.
Anything on park model, Gary?
Dear, that's Senate Bill 165.
165.
And I know that Shannon has made contact trying to make an amendment to that bill. The confusion is taxation on park model homes. Part of it is the fact that they can register those like a mobile home to begin with. And there's an argument back and forth whether or not, you know, when people receive their tax bill, and when they say, no, we've registered it as a mobile home, and the park model is really designed to be parked rather than that. And so I know that Shannon has made contact. He hasn't heard back on it at this point in time. It needs some modification to make, according to Shannon, to make it work for Pennington County.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner DeSanto?
I believe the current bill, correct me if I'm wrong, Gary, but basically it simplifies things tremendously. Basically, if you don't have it registered as a vehicle, then it's property, and you're going to get taxed that way. Not, no, end of discussion, no, whether it's attached to the ground or had a deck built on it or it's moved in the past 5 years. It's just flat out, you don't register it as a vehicle, then you're paying the taxes as real property.
Commissioner LaCroy, do you have a follow-up?
No, I just wanted to bring it to attention because during the Board of Equalization, this was, for the last 2 years, this has been something that's hot and heavy, and I was just impressed that we had somebody bring something forward this year, and I just wanted to highlight that it pays to have a commissioner on board.
That wouldn't be
As a
your
wife.
relative, would it be, Mark?
And I just want to thank Gary for the hard work that he's doing on updating us on this. I mean, that's not an easy task, following through all this stuff, and his experience and knowledge on this is well taken and appreciated.
I agree, and with Miss Holly's help, that's always a lot easier job to follow through. But thank you, Gary.
You're welcome.
Commissioner
Madam
Roskinek.
Chair, on the park models, I've worked with Shannon quite a bit on the issue of park models and how they should be taxed. And it's my understanding that they're licensed and registered so that they can get moved from the manufacturing plant to a location. Once they arrive in Pennington County and the wheels are taken off and they're put on blocks and they're skirted. If they're on leased property, which a lot of them are, then they become assessed as a building on leased property. That registration really doesn't mean anything, it's my understanding. And if it's on fee simple owned land, then it's once the tires come off and it sets, it becomes building on private land.
Thank you. I agree with you, Mr. Roskinek.
I think there's other campgrounds and stuff that probably don't like that idea, but it's my understanding that's the way they are assessed, and the way they're doing it is legal according to the state statutes.
So Commissioner DeSanto's right. Basically, if it's not a vehicle anymore, it becomes property. So, any other discussion? If not, Mr. Roskinick, you have something to bring forward on the 2019 Radio Communication Fund. There's a paper that, did you need a motion on?
Drafted a letter, and I'd like the commission to vote on that today so that we could get it sent to Governor Nome.
Can you tell us a little bit about it? Or Jerome
I'm
Harvey?
going to let Jerry take that honor.
Jerome?
Or Jerome, excuse me.
Come on, Jerry.
Jerome Harvey. Jerome Harvey.
Just don't call him late.
No, the letter that Commissioner Roskinick is referring to, the state radio digital system has been in place since 2003, 2004, put in place by Governor Jankalo. That time, Governor Jankalo did assure everyone that the backbone or the state part of the system would stay funded and stay in place and stay working. Under the last administration and peer, that wasn't the case. Governor Nome appears at this time to be moving forward with Governor Jankalo's promise of keeping the state network intact. And what the state network does impact all of our first responder services here in the county, EMS, fire, emergency management, law enforcement. The statistics show that the primary user, the heavy users of the system remain the local agencies such as the ones that we support here in Pennington County. But Commissioner Roskinick's letter simply supports Governor Nome's move to continue to fund the project under Senate Bill 180.
Move for approval.
Move for a letter from the board from LaCroix. Second is DeSanto. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Good job,
Thank you, Jerome.
Jerome and Roskinick on that. That's well needed. Next is vouchers. Do we have a motion?
Move for approval.
Moved by LaCroix,
Second.
second by Drews. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Items from the public, a time for the members of the public to discuss and express concerns to the Board of Commissioners on policies and issues affecting county government and its functions. Action will not be taken during this time on any issues brought forth that are not properly noticed. Sure? Okay. Next, let's do executive session, personnel issues. Per SDCL 1-25-2.
I'd make a motion that we go to executive session.
Motion by
Second.
Drews, second by Roskinick. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Okay,
Move
motion,
coming out of the executive session.
been a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Second by DeSanto. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. First motion,
I would move to give J. Alderman Laura Roselle and Josh Hendrickson two-step raise with the option to do 2 steps on anniversary date.
is there a second?
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. No. 3 ayes, 2 noes. Motion carries. Number 2 is, Cindy?
I would make a motion to pay starting wage to the auditor of base plus COLA on March 4th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by DeSanto, second by Drews. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Next.
Move
Motion
to
to
adjourn.
adjourn. Motion by LaCroix, second by DeSanto. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.